Hey everybody, welcome to the Canadian Job Search Podcast. My name is John Ribeiro and I will be your host. I'll be interviewing recruiters, hiring managers, and experts to help you land your next job sooner. Just a quick reminder to download your high-converting resume template that's been proven to get you more job interviews at resumetemplate.canadianjobsearchacademy.com. And if this episode resonates with you, then remember to subscribe, comment, and share. Thank you and welcome to the show. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Canadian Job Search Podcast. My name is John Ribeiro, your host, and today we've got a very special guest in Anu Aduvala. Anu is a senior people leader. She's passionate about customer service and employee success. Welcome to the podcast, Anu.
Thank you so much. It's really great to be here, John.
Yes, and we actually got connected through a common connection, which is, I always talk about the importance of networking and, the value that you find in networking. And if it wasn't for our network connection, we wouldn't be talking today, right? Like it's one of those things that people just need to be aware of. And I'm so glad that you're here to talk about customer service, because I know this is an area a lot of people are pursuing today. A lot of people are trying to get back into the job market after transitioning into something new. And the customer service space seems to be that space. So I'll get right into this, and I'll start with my very first question. When it comes to today's job market, what is one of the things that you notice has changed?
John, I found that a lot of different things are changing, honestly, about the job market. The pandemic has caused a lot of companies to really take a good look at what it is that they need. So the jobs themselves, the job descriptions are changing, the job postings are changing, whereby there are new things being added to them. Things like, health and safety, where, prior to the pandemic, every role might not have had that. But now more and more, they're talking about health and safety. They're talking about business continuity, especially in leadership positions. Some of these buzzwords in the job description are changing, and many companies I'm finding are posting positions that they've never had before. So the jobs themselves are different because they've found that there were these gaps that they didn't realize were there before. And then from the applicant perspective, from what I'm seeing, there's a lot more of them, where, some people unfortunately have been let go because of the pandemic. But not only that, some of the applicants themselves, they're in positions and they're realizing that, hey, maybe this isn't the company that's going to be able to provide me flexibility, because flexibility, again, a lot of people really realized how important that was to them. And unfortunately, some of the companies where they're working didn't step up to the plate, maybe didn't handle that pandemic very well and some of the employee needs. So now some of those employees are looking for places that will be able to help them out.
Yeah. No, and I totally agree. And this is what my research is telling me as well. There's going to be a mass flood, a mass exodus of people out of organizations where corporations aren't necessarily meeting their needs and giving them that flexibility. Because I know there's a big call to come back into the office, to go back to the way things were. And, that's, to me, that's not evolution. That's just kind of going backwards. And it's going to be a really interesting time. So when you were looking at individuals to bring onto your team, speaking to remote work and having, these situations where people needed to be working outside of a physical workspace, what were some of the characteristics that you were looking for in those individuals?
So what I found is, and I know a lot of parents, any parents who are listening to this, I find that some people are really great working through virtually, and some people just don't have the skill. It is a unique skill to be able to still engage employees, keep people interested. And I know the reason I say to parents, I have heard from many parents, oh, my son's teacher is really great and he loves that teacher virtually, but my daughter's teacher is terrible. And it's because of it's a different skill that people need when in person versus virtual to really engage people. So, depending on the job I was hiring for, a lot of the times when I've been hiring, in operations, you do need to have people who are willing to come into work, because people have to be out at facilities even when there's a pandemic. So there's that. But then there's those folks, those remote positions where it's, do they have the personality to engage people, whether it's customers, whether it's employees, virtually or not, because it is a different skill. So with that pandemic, it certainly helped us in seeing that, this isn't all just the same. It's not just log in and do your thing. You've got to have that engaging, ability to, or the ability to engage folks.
Yeah. So, and just so I could play it back, make sure I'm hearing it correctly. Communicate. I'm going to sum it down to just communication. Effective communication is key, especially in this work environment, being able to actively engage people and bringing people into the fold. And if you're not good at communication, you're going to be in trouble, right? And, as you were looking at some of these applicants, how do they bring that forward? How do they give you a good sense that they had a good handle on communication?
Well, honestly, now, I think John, that a lot of the recruitment is done online. Mm-hmm. So, the candidate shows us this online and how well they are. I mean, certainly when I was doing interviews throughout the pandemic, there are people who really had difficulty even getting their Zoom meeting to work. And so those were some folks that we had to kind of really think about, like, is this something that's going to work out for us because everything was going online? But there's also that personality. You can really, whether it's in person or virtually, you can feel it. And you're absolutely right. It is communication and understanding how important it is, because people aren't in the office seeing you, where that automatically triggers communication. You've got to have that, kind of go-getter who just knows the importance of it.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, as you're doing your actual interview for your roles, you got to make sure your tech is working. So whether you're using Zoom or Teams or one of the other meeting platforms, you got to know your stuff. You got to be, it's important that everything is working, and then being able to get yourself or bring your true self across when it comes to having those conversations, I'm going to use a term a good friend of mine uses all the time. And she says, making that human connection with people. So when you're interviewing these folks, what are you looking for specifically? So I know we talked about communication at a high level, but what are you looking for when you're in the interview process with them, whether you're hiring for, a management type position or a lower level than a management type position? What are you looking for specifically?
Yeah, I think obviously the skills, we always look at that, do they have the skills? Do they have the experience? Those kinds of things everybody knows about. But really what we're looking for is that attitude, the communication. But, with the amount of turnover these days, it's also looking for, does this person just want a job? Or do they want to work in my company and my job? I'm looking for somebody who knows what they've applied to, not just someone who has a mass applied and they're not actually sure who they're speaking to, but they know about the company. They want to work for my company and my department and this job that I've posted. And that really needs to come out in the interview, because I do find that there's a lot of folks who are just detached. And they're just, I just need something. And that can come out in the interview process. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've heard that from recruiters as well, right? Where they will be calling a candidate and the candidate say, well, who is this? What company is this? And what position is this for? Mm-hmm. I think as a candidate, you should know all that information. It shouldn't be somebody else on the phone telling you because you've done your research, right? And as I'm hearing, there's a couple of different things that are coming out. Number one is passion. You definitely have to have passion for the type of work that you're doing. The other part that I'm hearing is you have to do your research. So how important is it for you to, when you're connecting and meeting with talent, I'm going to call them talent. How important is it for you to get that sense they have a good sense of the organization and the company and the culture and all those things?
It is really important to me, John. As a hiring manager, I find it, I always ask, what do you know about the company and why did you apply for this role? I want to know that. I don't, sadly, I've had, responses such as, well, the pay seems good. And, it's close to my house. So those kinds of answers mean that you're not going to stick around for long, because if the pay is better somewhere else, or if it's somewhere closer to your house, you're gone. I need someone who's going to be committed to my organization and to this position, and that passion. You're right. I want to be able to hear and see that they are excited about that. Yeah. And I think when you are excited about something, it doesn't matter if you're face to face or virtual or just over the phone. You can hear it, you can see it, and you can certainly know when it's not there as well.
Yeah, no, definitely, and I'm definitely sensing that, and this isn't just you. Like, I've gotten this from a lot of people that I've interviewed, where that passion, that desire to want to work for a particular organization is just as important as your hard skills, right? And if you can't bring that across, like, oh my gosh, yeah, it's close to my house, that's why I want to work here. Well, for those of you that are listening, and maybe some of you have used that in the past, recommendation is don't use that in the future, because I don't even think, given where we are, and I know a lot of organizations are in the midst of trying to decide whether or not they're going to bring people into the office again, right? Because there's, big organizations like Google are talking about it. I know organizations like Shopify are already saying, we're going to keep our workforce remote, indefinitely. There's no return date at this point, right? So, so from that perspective, what would be one of those key skills from being able to be working remote? What are you looking for? What are you looking to capture as you're going through the interview to really get a good understanding that they're good to work independently?
That's sometimes tough to capture, John, because, if someone is doing it well, they're doing an interview where there's no distractions. They told everyone, do not bother me. They've got their phone somewhere else. If they're doing it well, but that isn't always reality. And so that is really tough, because, in regular situations, I don't know when your school might be, have an outbreak, and now your kids are at home with you, and those are distractions. And so as an employer, you've got to be understanding that all of these things could happen. And you're really hiring this person because of that passion. You know that they want to work. They've got the skills and experience, but you really can't predict, every situation. And that has been proven to us over the past year and a half, where we weren't able to predict any of that. Honestly, I was ready to go back to work in 2 weeks when I first heard in March of 2020. And, it's been a crazy ride over the past year and a half. So I think we've just really got to understand as hiring managers that, whether you're in person, whether you're remote, there are going to be things that are unpredictable. And we just have to trust our employees and make sure that we're doing the best we can in the hiring, ask the right questions in the hiring to try and get as much information as we can. But I really think it goes back to that passion and to that, that person wanting to work for you and your company.
Yeah. No, sorry, go ahead.
What I was going to say was that it's not just about the candidate applying. After you hired somebody, you have a lot of work to do to keep that person too, and keep them engaged and ensure that they want to keep working with you, because people's expectations are, a lot different than they were before. You have to work as an employer to keep that person for as long as possible.
Yeah, no, and I'm definitely getting that sense. Company culture has to shift. It's not even, whether or not it needs to consider shifting to something new. It definitely has to shift in order, like you said, to retain talent. So from a talent retention perspective, what are some of the things that you used to do to kind of keep, your team engaged? Because to give sense to a candidate, these are the type of things you should be looking for as you're interviewing the employer. What were some of those key benefits that, that you used to provide to individuals to keep them engaged and active and passionate with the work that they were doing?
Well, I think it starts right from the hiring process, John. I've heard from so many candidates and people who I have mentored how terrible the hiring process can be, where, they're waiting weeks on end to hear back from people. They're sending emails and they're getting nothing. And so I think it starts right with the hiring process and making a great impression on the person that you want to hire. And so it is showing that professionalism, getting back to people, understanding how they're feeling. But then even when you're ready to hire, put that personal touch. Don't let it be HR sending the email. I always like to call the candidate myself and let them know, hey, we're really excited about meeting with you and we want to have you on our team. Are you still interested? And they're super excited to hear. And then HR can go ahead and do the piece that they need to do. But I put in that personal connection. And then with the onboarding, gosh, I have heard horror stories of onboarding from many people over the past number of months, that with it being, virtual in some companies, that I guess the level of service provided to that new employee has really declined. So I personally find that it's so important to work with that candidate, make that onboarding experience the best that you possibly can. And then, of course, that's got to continue. It can't just stop after week 1 or week 2. It's those constant connections, coaching sessions, and helping that employee feel that they are valuable to you, because they are.
Yeah. Well, and they have choice today, right? So
a lot.
And, I've even heard where, individuals who do get into a role, they start going through the onboarding practice, the onboarding process, and it's not, like you said, it's not very good. And they end up leaving before they even start day one, just because of the way onboarding is set up. So it's, for candidates that are out there listening, and actually, I want to get your perspective on this, because I think this would be interesting. How would you feel if a candidate or a talent asked you, what's your onboarding process like? Like, would you?
I think that's absolutely a great question. Especially with the way things are now, I would welcome that question, and I would understand that question. Again, because I mentor folks and I know people who have gone through exactly the situation that you just spoke about, John, where, they're there and they're, I don't even really want to work for this company anymore because of how they're treating me through the hiring process. I was excited at first, but now it's like, really? This is how the company works? And so, no, if somebody's asking that question, I would completely understand, and I would provide them with the answer to the question, because I think I know why they're asking it, and I think it's fair for them to ask it before they start with the company.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to have to add that question to my list of interview prep questions, or interview questions you should ask in an interview as a talent, because I think it's incredibly important, because it's this, just like you're doing your research, a candidate's doing a research about the organization, understanding their onboarding practice, like their onboarding process, is really going to affect how you integrate into the organization right away. So
I would add onboarding and training. Even they could call out training, because I have also seen a number of posts, as well as spoken to folks about, I didn't get training. I was just told to reach out to people and ask them questions if I had some.
And to tell you the truth, as a former hiring manager, years ago, that was my practice, right? I would say, I'll connect you, day one, you kind of walk somebody through the office, you introduce them to people. And then it's like, okay, I'm busy now. I got to go back to my job. So the recruitment process is done. If you need information, go talk to this person, and this person, and they'll guide you through the rest of the way. But today, that's number one, that's not even possible. It's possible because you can call somebody, but they too have schedules, and it's got to be different today, right? Like you just brought me back to a moment where I was reminiscing around, the way I used to do it. And that wasn't very effective either. So, and it would just take you longer to onboard. Because one of the new things that I'm hearing, and the expectation from employers, is that you got to be hitting the ground running on day one. There's no more of this 3-month type of leeway of integrating into organizations. You got to integrate right away. And so is that something that was true for you when you were in the process of bringing people in?
It was true for me when I was hired into positions that my leaders wanted me to hit the ground running. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. For myself, I think this is something, it takes me to another point, if you don't mind me going a little bit off track, but to answer this question, John, what I find is, hit the ground running. A lot of candidates, one of the mistakes the candidate does is because of this hit the ground running mentality, they're looking at job postings and saying, I don't have 100% of the skills, I shouldn't apply. And I find that that's a really common mistake, that candidates should understand that it's not only about the skills when a hiring manager is hiring. They are looking for the attitude, and a hiring manager can make concessions on the skills if you've got the right attitude and the passion and you've done your research. And so, I wanted to kind of do that, take that little side swipe with you, because of the fact that I think that candidates need to know that 100% of the skills doesn't mean that's the only job you apply for. 80% of the skills, 75%, but you've got the right attitude and you've got the passion and you really want to work at this company, make sure you're applying, because you could be the top candidate even though you don't have the top skill.
Yeah, and that's a great point. So I like it. You said around 75, 80% if you have that much. I've even heard less, right? Like some of the folks that I've interviewed, they said even 60, 65% is sufficient.
Yeah.
Right? Because you just got to make up the rest. So this is a question, right? Because a lot of these resumes are being submitted through an application tracking system that uses algorithms and keywords to filter people out. And sometimes they don't make it to you, right? Because they don't have 100% or 80% or 75% of the skills. What's another way a candidate can still apply to those roles and still connect with you personally?
Well, referrals is always, important. Pandemic, no pandemic, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and right now, referrals are really important because, if you know someone in the company who's working in that company, or know somebody who knows me as I'm the hiring manager, it's always a good thing to say, hey, can you send my resume over to that hiring manager? And I know there's a lot of folks who feel like, oh my gosh, I would rather die than do that. But really, that is how a lot of the jobs are acquired, is by those referrals, because there's hundreds of people applying for positions and your resume might not make it through. However, if somebody says, hey, I know this person, you should interview them, now it's just made it through.
Yeah.
And so those referrals and those contacts and that networking is really, really important, because you're right. Computer systems, those tracking systems, can weed out some good candidates.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I know this is one of the things that we were talking about before we even started this call, but just the importance of connecting with your networking. A lot of people think of networking as a dirty, bad thing, and it's not. It's a good thing.
No.
Networking is it's just another way of making a connection with somebody, and ultimately, whether it's a resume, a cover letter, a LinkedIn profile, or a phone call, it's the human connection that you're trying to make. And if you can make that connection, that's when things change. So you wanted to add something?
Yeah, what I was going to say is that I find that it's not that people find that it's bad, but it's scary. And so reaching out, like, I don't want to feel like I'm asking for jobs. And you shouldn't. When you're connecting with people and networking with people, you shouldn't be saying, hey, I need a job. It's, hey, I'm applying for different roles. Can you tell me what it's like to work at your company?
Yeah.
And so that it's about how you do it. So I think people are just nervous because they feel like, I'm asking somebody for a job. If you're doing it that way, I can see why it would be a bit scary, but by just connecting to people, building that connection, that relationship, asking them information about things, not for a job, but information, could be advice about something. Those things are great to do when you're reaching out to different contacts. It does not have to be and shouldn't be about, hey, can you get me a job over there?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I kind of go back to, the analogy I use quite a bit in workshops. It's like, asking somebody for a job that you don't know is like going up to a stranger on the street and asking them for $1,000. Like,
Right.
you would never do that because you would say, well, that just doesn't make sense. It's the same approach. So those of you that are listening, just going out and asking people for jobs without building any rapport, any relationship with them. Remember, it's like asking a stranger for $1,000, and you know the answer to that one already. So, because you would not give somebody $1,000 if they were just strangers for you. So yeah, you definitely got to build that relationship first. And, that's a big part of it. And I'm glad you touched on that because, and even though it was a bit of a, a sidestep, but I think it's an important one because I think, if individuals can think of their job search and think of regardless of title, and I think the part where people get scared, just kind of building on what you spoke about, just treat them like people, right? A CEO is a person, a CFO is a person, a VP, vice president of organization is a person. So just treat them like people, right? And I think there's a lot of stigma around that in terms of, I can't talk to that person. They're like 4 or 5 levels, especially for a lot of newcomers, right? People from outside the country who are here, who've worked in environments where you never did that, right? And I think this is the beauty of the Canadian work environment is you can go to anybody as long as they're open to it. And if they're, if they've got some sort of, social presence and they're active on their social presence, whether it be LinkedIn, Facebook, or some other channel, just speak to them, right? Because if they're open to sharing their ideas and their thoughts, then that means they're approachable. That's the way I see it. And I would guess it would be the same for you, right? If somebody connected with you directly, actually, and this is a question, let's ask you the question. Have you ever been approached directly by a candidate and have you ever turned them away or not responded to them?
It depends on what it is and how they approach me, John. And so if someone is saying, again, can you get me this job? And there's a job that's posted and I'm the hiring manager, it's something where everybody's got to go through the process. And I don't know you and you're saying, can you get me a job? So somebody who does that, yes, I will turn them away. I'll let them know that I'm sorry, I can't get you a job. You'll need to go through this process. I don't know you. However, there's also people who reach out and say, I'd like to connect with you because I see that you have helped other newcomers to Canada and I'd like to get some advice. Or, you helped my friend. Can you help me out as well? Do you mind looking at my resume? And, on LinkedIn, it's a good thing and a bad thing. You don't want to just connect with someone and not say anything. Use a generic connect. Yeah. If you are looking for help, let that person know because, I believe that a large portion of people really like helping others, want to help others. And I know for myself, it's honestly the best part of my day is when I can help someone else do anything and everything. And so if someone's reaching out saying, I need some help with this, can I see this experience that you have? Can you help me with this? I'm going to say at least 80% of people that you reach out to are going to say, sure, let me help you out. And so it's that approach that you take that will make sure that you're not turned away.
Yeah. And you guys heard it here, right? So for the audience members that are listening to this, you can reach out, and in most cases, and I'm with you, Anu, my firm belief is, people just want to help other people. I don't think not everybody wants to help everybody. So, just be cautious of that. But I think, what you said, 80 to maybe even 90% of people want to help. So, right. And it comes down to your approach. And if you have an approach, and I'm just going to go with, some of these words, sincere and authentic and genuine and vulnerable. Like I heard that as you were speaking, the one thing that kind of popped up to me is that vulnerability, just to say, hey, you know what, I'm looking for some assistance. Would you be able to just even provide some feedback on something? And if you could do that, that just goes to your character. And it also demonstrates how you're going to be in the work environment too, right? When you're struggling with something, you're not going to hide it or, tuck it away somewhere. You're going to bring it up to the forefront and deal with it. And I think there's a lot that gets, there's a lot to be, oh man, I'm lost for words here. There's a lot to I can't remember. I don't know what the word is.
Showing that you are comfortable asking those questions, I think, John, because, I think you're right in that some cultures feel that by asking leaders questions shows, that you're insecure, you don't know anything, and it's that negative connotivity. Whereas, honestly, I find that in Canada, by asking those questions, I want people to ask the questions. I'd much rather them ask the questions, feel comfortable asking those questions, because it shows strength. And it shows that they want to do it right. And so that shows care and strength, and that they are, again, it goes back to that I'm passionate. I want to do it right. If you tell me once, I've got it, and I won't have to ask you again. And I've learned from it. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, no, it definitely speaks. I think the word I was looking for before was character, and it speaks to character a lot, right? So, and that's something you can't make up, and that's not something that you can hide. It's just who you are, right? So, so this has been fantastic. And as we start to wrap up, if there's one piece of advice that you would give to a talent that's looking for an opportunity today, what would be that one thing?
I would say apply. Don't sell yourself short. There are jobs out there, and if you've got that attitude and you've got the attitude to succeed, then let other people see you. Let other people see you and apply for those positions. I know, again, being a person of color, that there are many people of color who said, I'm not going to get that leadership role anyway. Why bother applying? Times are changing. Please apply for positions, because if you don't apply, you're not even starting.
Yeah. So you guys heard it here. Just apply. Just apply, but do your work, do your research, and do it in a way that's intelligent. I want to use the word intelligent. And that just means, doing your research, getting a really good understanding of the organization, the market that you're looking for, and just know them, and then just apply. All right. Don't hide, and then network with folks. And I guess I'm summing up what we're talking about, but apply and then network. And that's the other big part of it. So Anu, if individuals wanted to, if some of the listeners wanted to get a hold of you or learn more about you, where could they go for that?
They can certainly go to my LinkedIn profile. And again, if you're reaching out and you need some help or information or assistance, please don't hesitate. I would love to help you out in any way that I can. Excellent. But it's the best part of my day.
I will. That is awesome. And that's refreshing. And thank you for sharing that. So for those of you that are listening, I will include Anu's link to her LinkedIn profile in the show notes, so you can quickly connect with her there. And with that, I just want to say thank you, Anu, for your time today. It's been great speaking with you and just, getting some insights in terms of what candidates need to do. And I have like 2 pages of notes here with me. So I know that the audience members are probably taking away several notes as well. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, John. It's been such a pleasure. And I hope that I hear from some of the folks who are listening to the call today.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. You might be like, oh man, look at all these people connecting with me, but I know they will. So thank you. And thank you everybody for listening in to this episode of the podcast. Wishing you all a great one. Talk to you all soon. Take care.
Take care.